Ash from Super Videos back for another video. This is going to be my review and discussion for 7-11, Season 7, Episode 11 of The Walking Dead, which was called Hostiles and Calamities. The start of this episode was basically what we got in the sneak peek. Dwight finds that Daryl has escaped, so he finds Fat Joey's body after he's been murdered by Daryl. Then he looks at the bike, finds out that the bike is missing, so he quickly realizes that something is going on, so he goes to Daryl's cell and sees that he's missing. And then that leads him to go back to his own room to check, and he finds that Daryl has in fact taken the keys to the motorcycle and escaped. So that whole scene was pretty cool. I've already went into detail about that in my sneak peek discussion and breakdown, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but it was pretty cool. Meanwhile, we have Negan and the Saviors coming back to the sanctuary with Eugene, but we actually didn't see Negan's reaction to seeing Fat Joey, or seeing that Fat Joey has died, which I really wanted to see actually, so I'm a bit disappointed. We did hear him talk about it on the radio back in Season 7, Episode 9, so I was hoping that they would actually show some kind of flashback for that, but they didn't, and it was disappointing in that aspect. Also, they didn't show Negan first finding out that Daryl has escaped, which is also a disappointing thing, and it's a shame. But the episode was actually good, even though there are these two major problems I see with it. But then of course we see Eugene coming to the sanctuary. The whole scene between Eugene and Lara talking about what food he wants was pretty cool, pretty funny. Eugene had a couple of very hilarious lines in this episode, which was pretty cool. From the lobster scene, from saying he wants a lobster to getting pickles and things like that. It was all fun. I really liked it. But what is very interesting goes back to Negan's strategy about finding the best way to use people. We can see it in this episode clearly because we see that Eugene is not having the same experience at the sanctuary as Daryl did. He's not being locked in a cell. He's actually given his own room, which means that Negan is finding some sort of use in keeping Eugene alive and keeping him relatively in good shape and in good condition, which is pretty cool to see. Obviously, this is because Eugene is smart, he knows things, he can make bullets and things like that, so Negan pretty much realizes that he needs to treat Eugene different than Daryl. For Daryl, he was trying to break Daryl so that he could turn him into a savior, but for Eugene, it's not necessarily trying to break him and turning him into a savior, but rather using Eugene's knowledge for the saviors. But then we have the parts about Dwight as well. I actually really loved what they did with Dwight in this episode, and I thought Austin Emilio's performance, who of course plays Dwight, was amazing in this episode. He did a fantastic job. But we have Negan and the saviors coming for Dwight, and Negan has a bunch of saviors beating Dwight up because of course Negan thinks that Dwight had something to do with Daryl's escape. And of course we find out in this episode that it was actually Sherry who let Daryl out. So that's been revealed, which is something that we speculated given that we saw how much of a panic Dwight was in when he found out that Daryl had escaped. But it's very cool what Negan did because he had Dwight locked up in the same room or in the same cell as Daryl, which kind of puts things into perspective for Dwight that at any moment, if he does something, he's no different than Daryl to Negan, and that he's going to be locked up and he needs to show Negan how loyal he is to him, which was pretty cool. But then we have the part with Dwight being in the cell and he actually lies to Negan saying that it wasn't Sherry. Of course he does that to protect Sherry, but in a way we actually get to see that even though Dwight is very loyal or seems to be very loyal to Negan, and he even says I'm Negan and things like that, he will step away from his loyalty to save the person he loves, to protect the person he loves, who is Sherry, which was pretty cool to see. And then of course moving away from the Dwight stuff a little bit, we have Negan talking to Eugene and threatening him, which is also the other part of the sneak peek that I broke down for you guys a couple days ago, where Negan is basically showing Eugene how much authority he has and that he could beat him up at any moment, and that Eugene needs to prove his ability to be useful for the saviors in order to stay alive. And we see that Eugene plays his part perfect in this scenario, trying to adapt to his surroundings and try to do things so that he could survive, even if it means breaking rules of morality a little bit in those terms. But again, he's doing it so that he would stay safe for now until something happens so that things change. I'm going to be doing a separate video about what Eugene is doing and whether or not he's actually broken or not. At least for this review, I'm not going to go into more detail about that. But what's actually very cool that I found hilarious was how Eugene was trying to prove to Negan that he's actually a doctor, that he's got PhDs, he's got doctorates and things like that, which was pretty cool, to be honest. I don't know if he was telling the truth or not. Of course, Eugene is known to lie when he's put in situations like this. He did the same thing to Abraham, so it's not really clear whether or not he's actually being completely serious about all of those things. I'm pretty sure he's smart. He's shown to be very smart, but I don't know how truthful he was at that point. But it actually helped him. So in those terms, it was very beneficial for him to say the things he said, because Negan bought all of his stuff, whether it was bullshit or not. What's funny is that what Eugene says about fighting fire with fire and things like that, about what he was doing when he was still in school and things like that, that exact phrase is actually the phrase he tells Glenn and the others when he wants them to believe that he's found a cure. So that adds to my suspicion that he's just putting things together to say, but none of them mean anything. He's just saying things that sound smart, which is pretty cool. But of course we have Negan offering a token of his gratitude to Eugene and sending him some of his wives to spend time with him. Of course, as Negan says, no sex, which was pretty cool. And it actually shows how much authority Negan has, because even in a situation like that, he's not going to offer Eugene something like that, you know? He did offer Dwight something like this when he said, I'll send you Sherry a couple episodes back. It was episode 3, I think. But for Eugene, there's no way in hell Negan is doing something like that for Eugene. So that was pretty cool to see. But of course we have Eugene with Negan's wives, and Eugene is playing video games. There was something about this moment in the show that reminded me of The Big Bang Theory, which was pretty cool, but it's just something that we don't see on The Walking Dead. Someone playing a video game, and there's like hot girls around, and we have a nerd who Eugene is playing a video game. So that was very cool to see. But then of course we have Negan's discussion with Dwight about where Sherry could have gone. And then of course we have Dwight going back to his old house looking for Sherry, finding that letter, which was very cool. I think that was one of the highlights of this episode for me. Just that whole sequence where Sherry is basically talking to Dwight through this letter, which was pretty cool. That specific line in the letter where she basically says that I love the person who you were and I'm sorry that I turned you into the person you are, was very powerful. And it really moved both Dwight and Sherry's story going forward, which was pretty amazing to see. And then of course we have Negan's wives. I don't know about their names. I think one was Frankie, but I don't know about the other one. Telling Eugene to make Amber a pill or a poison or something like that so she could commit suicide because she is not feeling well. She's just hating life and things like that. She doesn't want to be with Negan, things like that. And of course we have Eugene buying into it a little bit. But straight away I knew that something was up. I was initially thinking that it was a test, like a test that Negan had for Daryl in episode 3. So I thought it was that. I also did initially think that it was for Negan as well, but my first thought was that it was a test. But I knew that it wasn't Amber trying to commit suicide. I knew it wasn't as easy as that. But of course we have Eugene buying into that a little bit, which was very cool to see. And then we have Eugene in the line trying to get stuff to make the pill. And we actually see Eugene's dark side a little bit in this scene and how he uses his power. So in a way, in this specific scene, he is no different than the other saviors. He is using the power he has to do things that he shouldn't be doing. In that scenario, if Eugene was still the person he was, if Negan and the saviors didn't take him, he would never say something like that. He would never cut in line and say that I have a higher rank than you and things like that. So we can see how much he's changing or at least adapting to the surroundings he's in, which was very cool to see. And then right after that, of course, we have the most epic scene in the entire episode, which is the ironing scene, or the so-called ironing scene. So of course we have Negan coming in, Dwight is getting the iron ready. We find out that Dwight set up the doctor, left a part of the note that Sherry left for him, Dwight, in the doctor's office or his room so that Negan would find it and think that there was something going on between Sherry and the doctor, so that Negan would blame everything on the doctor and punish the doctor instead of Sherry or even Dwight, which is a dick move on Dwight's part, to be honest. And I don't even know what they're going to do going forward. If they're going to stick with Dwight's comic arc, that's going to be a bit rough now, given what he just did in this episode. But we have Negan threatening the doctor with the iron, almost putting it to his face, saying, all you have to say is sorry, things like that, and pushing the doctor to say sorry. And of course he does. But then when we think everything is good, boom, Negan does something that I never thought he would do. But of course it's Negan. He's unpredictable. So he throws the doctor into the fire or the furnace and he burns him alive, which is a pretty screwed up thing to do for Negan. And you can even say that the doctor's blood is on Dwight's hands. Negan as well, but of course Dwight, because he set him up. So that whole scene was pretty intense, pretty brutal, and it just added to the rawness of the episode, and I loved it. But going back to Negan, for Negan to do something like this, that just changes things a little bit, at least for me, about Negan's stance and what he's going to be becoming in the future and what he's going to be doing in the future. And just like Dwight, for Negan, I don't think that they can stick to the arc that he has in the comics completely 100% because it just wouldn't feel right. So they have to remix things a little bit given what just happened in this episode, in this specific scene, which is very interesting. Before I get to the whole Negan-Eugene bit at the end, something I forgot to mention is about Eugene refusing to make the poison when he realizes that it's for Negan. Now, that goes a bit too far in my opinion. So it's not really about Eugene adapting to his surroundings, because in that scenario he could easily have made a poison to kill Negan and solve all of the problems, or at least the problems at the surface. But what I love is the subtle thing that they have in there, because Eugene didn't refuse to kill Negan with the poison because he likes Negan or he likes the way things are or anything like that. It's because there's a part of him that thinks that this is a test. And because of that, he doesn't want to be a part of it because he knows it's going to mean he's going to die if he does something like that. So I think this specific scene is more about Eugene showing the saviors and the audience that he is really smart, that he's not going to fall into no trap like that, even though there was really no trap. But even if there's a chance for that to happen, Eugene isn't going to take that risk. So he's going to show the audience and the saviors how smart he really is, which I really loved. But then to get to the last bit with Eugene saying, I am Negan, to Negan. We all saw it coming. We knew if Negan asks him, who are you? He's going to be a coward and he's going to say, I'm Negan. We don't expect Eugene to be Daryl, to say, I'm Eugene, and act all tough and stuff. So it was predictable. We all knew he was going to say he is Negan if he was asked, so there's nothing to it. And like I said previously, he is adapting to his surroundings. He sees how everyone says, I am Negan, and how things function at the sanctuary, so he knows how things are going to turn out if he is truthful and he says, I am Eugene. Even though it was predictable, it was a cool scene regardless. I really loved it. And then to end this review, right at the end, we have the reunion, or at least some kind of reunion between Dwight and Eugene. If you remember, of course, Eugene bit Dwight's dick back in season 6. So it was pretty cool to see them on screen again together. Kind of like a mini reunion, which was pretty cool. But in terms of a rating, I'm going to give this episode a mid-low grade rating. I thought it was a good episode. It moved the story forward a lot. It had a lot of great elements in there that are going to be very essential part of the story in the future. And because of that, I really loved this episode. And the highlights of this episode for me were the whole thing with the letter, Dwight Sherry and the letter, and also that whole ironing scene at the end, or at least the setup for the iron scene at the end. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.